Meet Sylvia Ho, a lawyer who's got the legal info that business people need to know.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my office. Today, we're going to talk about business coaching. A lot of very successful entrepreneurs, including many of my clients and myself, have coaches. And I've invited Sharon Lewis of Abby Coach to come and talk to us about what coaches do and how coaches help business owners in succeeding and in scaling their business. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you. Good morning.
So, Sharon, what is a business coach and how does a business coach work with a client, a business owner in their business?
Okay. So a business coach is really someone who helps a business owner stay focused on where they want to go. So we all have where we want to be with our businesses and where we are now. And usually there's a difference in there. And what a business coach does is works with a business owner in that space in between. So really helping them get out of the day-to-day, I need to make the donut type stuff and focus on the goals and actions that they need to do to get them to where they want to go. So a lot of it's focus and accountability. Sometimes it's figuring out what that actually looks like, right? So if you get caught up in the day-to-day stuff, you may not actually know where you're trying to go. You're just trying to survive today, tomorrow, or 2020, and recently. But that's a lot of what the business coach is doing, is really getting them focused and directed towards their future goals for the business.
So I would expect that, there are lifestyle coaches, there are psychology oriented coaches, there are coaches that are much more business consultants. Could you describe like the varying types of coaches? I would say not someone who's going to be a health coach is not going to help someone with a business.
Although you would be surprised, because a lot of coaches have scope creep into other things. But so the first one that I would want to explain is the difference between a business consultant and a business coach. So a business consultant answers all your questions. A business coach questions all your answers. So
wow.
It's kind of cool, right? But the business consultant, usually you're hiring them to come in and fix a problem. It's more of a short-term engagement of, I have a financial problem, I need it fixed. They come in and they help you with that, or they do it themselves for you. Whereas the business coach is more of the teach a man to fish sort of thing, where we're figuring it out together and we're figuring out what it is you need to do to grow to address that yourself as you move on. So that's business consultant versus business coach. Within the coaching frame, you've got all kinds of different niches, really, right? So there's different niches for what they're coaching, who they're coaching, right? So you have business coaches that focus only on restaurants, only on gyms, only on lawyers. You have some that differentiate themselves on style. So there are Christian business coaches. There are some that differentiate themselves because they're focused on a tool. Profit First is a tool that some business coaches use. That's their platform, right? It could be that they're focused on only one aspect of the business. So you have sales coaches, you have financial coaches, you have marketing coaches. You also have life coaches, right? And this is part of the scope creep. So a lot of life coaches are more of the holistic mindset thing, but a lot of life coaches will say, well, I'm a life coach, but I also do business coaching. Well, so thinking about it, it depends on what you need, right? So if you need more of a mindset change, yeah, maybe you do need a life coach that does some business coaching. But then there's also the executive coaches and the leadership coaches that are working with more of the personal development aspect of it than it is the whole business. So for what I think about it is, as a business coach, I'm looking holistically at the business. some aspect of that does include the person. So somebody asked me the other day if I was getting into life coaching, and I'm like, you can't coach on the business without covering some of the life stuff. But that's not my area. And I certainly will help people because it's somewhat business coach slash therapist some days, slash, so I listen to the problems to the point where, I've had clients where I've had to refer them out because they needed somebody else to talk to other than me, because it was getting out of the business stuff and more into the personal, the things that were holding them back were personal things, as opposed to not understanding the business or not knowing where they wanted to go with the business.
That's a very interesting piece of information, because it's often what I encounter as a small business lawyer when you are involved in helping closely held businesses that have one owner, or maybe a family involved, or maybe partners involved. So that personal piece is really important, because at some point the business is interfering with the lifestyle, or the business and the person somewhat are kind of cleaved to each other as an entity. And if the business owner is not doing well health-wise, including mental health, then the business is going to suffer. And if something catastrophic were to happen, the business owner needs some support in order to get themselves out of that situation, to put the business back on track, right? And oftentimes, I think that I, in fact, some business owners are very task oriented, so they might want to have a consultant. So what value, I guess, how would I convince someone, because I am sold on the idea of having coaches, and I always recommend them, especially in critical stages of a business's life that's dealing with issues, whether or not they're issues of decline and financial issues, or issues of growth, which could become financial issues if you don't have clarity around what you're thinking. How would someone know when they really need it to reach out and explore the possibility that maybe they need a coach or some unbiased person who's going to help them accomplish their goals?
So I don't think any business owner should go it alone. I think we all need some sort of team to help us, whether that's a business lawyer, an accountant, business coach, but pulling those resources together, because what you need is, as a business owner, is really an objective view of your business, right? So it's being able to step out of that day-to-day stuff and take a 30,000-foot view of your business and where you want to go, and really doing a reality check. And sometimes we need other people to do that for us. You've been doing it this way for 10 years. Why are you still doing it this way? Does it work for you? Really questioning some of the things that we do. The other aspect of it is we don't know what we don't know, right? So looking at the business from a more holistic approach of, are we missing things? A lot of business owners miss things because they're afraid of them, right? The numbers in the business would be like the top one of, they cause fear and anxiety. So yeah, exactly. If I stick my head in the sand, it'll go away. But they cause fear and anxiety, so people avoid them, right? So a business coach can help take away some of that fear. There's a good business coach, there's no judgment for stuff you don't know that even if you feel like you should have. I've been in business for 20 years and I don't really understand this, and now I'm worried I'm going to look like an idiot because I should have known this all along. Business coaches there to support you through that, to help figure some of those things out. The other part is accountability. So really, if you're telling somebody else that you're going to do something, you're more likely to do it. The business coach brings you back to the focus of the things that you wanted to accomplish and why you wanted to accomplish them.
You brought up a really good point about the team. And some people talk about that. Some business owners look at that as being a team. And I like to look at it as a board of advisors.
Mhm.
And in the tech world, when you're dealing with a venture-based sort of concern, that there's things that angels and investors always ask you about, which is who's on your board of advisors. Now, that doesn't really coincide into the Main Street world, because in Main Street world, we popped up a business and it was a pop-up business and it was a side hustle and it just became very expensive. And I mean, very successful, and things started to get expensive and we just kept working. And then before we know it, we're kind of in this hamster wheel of it's expensive to run, but we're very successful. We think we're going to be successful one day, but we're just going to keep doing it. And then we're basically in the day in and day out without, the opposite of that, which is a entrepreneur with a technology which a number of people are interested in, and they bring in a group that's your board of advisors that will later be a board of directors. So my clients are Main Street businesses. They are not generally, they might be a manufacturing concern with some patents involved, but I consider those not venture-based businesses because they're not going to be the next Amazon. They at least would find other lawyers other than me. So in terms of that team, from your point of view, who should be on that team or who should be on a board of advisors for any business owner?
Um, so definitely a business coach, maybe a business coach, but a business lawyer is like somebody you could reach out to for legal questions. A really good accountant that can answer all those questions. Sometimes it can be peers, right? So I think the one of the traps business owners fall into is really being lonely, right? They're especially now, we don't leave our homes or we're not leaving our offices. They have fewer people to talk to about things. So really getting somebody out there that is a sounding board. A lot of times the business coach fills that role. A lot of my business owners are in smaller businesses where they don't have a management team, so they've got nobody to bounce ideas off of. Or if they do have a management team,
Right.
It's not the right structure for them to go in and say, hey, I really don't understand this, or I'm thinking about changing this. There's that management team's still their employees, and necessarily want to freak out your employees.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right,
Lawyer, accountant, business coach, peers. I mean, there could certainly be other people in there, but that's pretty much the basis.
When I was involved in the tech world, and I own several businesses, but when I was involved in the tech world, I would be privy to all these CEO clubs, where a group of CEOs in varying sub areas of technology would come together and they would have a monthly lunch and they would informally run ideas by each other. I mean, that's a very valuable kind of thing. Is that something that you would put your clients into, or a business coach would recommend?
If they didn't have that somewhere else, and depending on the level and the style of the business, absolutely. Mastermind groups are great for that if you can find the right one, right? Because that is really just a peer group setting where it's a safe space to ask questions and raise concerns and practice. But those are the types of things that if you don't have that in a natural setting, I think one of my clients a couple of years ago, we were talking about who else he talks to. He's like, I don't talk to any other business owners. So it was basically that was the role that I filled, was having somebody else to talk to.
Yeah, right, right. There are mastermind groups, and it seems like they're very difficult to find. Just like having a business coach, finding a business coach it's difficult to find. And in my experience, I think that they're very. There's also, you covered the gamut in terms of types and industries, but there's also stages of whether you're early stage, whether you're very, very small and you're creative, and you're a solopreneur versus if you have a large business and a large in the small field being 1,000 people. So they just vary. How would you find a coach, and how would you determine whether or not that coach is going to be a good coach for you?
So the easiest way to find a coach is to ask your peer group if they're using anybody, right? So if they've had an experience with them, because personal referrals are the best. You can get an idea of how the coach works without actually talking to them. Google search is wonderful. And some of it depends what you want out of it. So, in the current environment, we're all working virtually anyway. So does it matter if the coach is not, 20 minutes away from you? Yeah, right. So that is some of what you have to consider. I think the best way to judge whether a coach is right for you is almost everybody that I've run into offers a complimentary coaching session. So it's a very relationship based decision, right? So, and it can be, you think about some of the other people you work with where it's not necessarily, what they offer and how they where they are. It's do I click with the person, right? So in a complimentary coaching session, you should be able to get a good feel for, I have a connection with this person and I'm going to be comfortable telling them everything, basically, right? So with a good business coach client relationship, there's really no secrets and surprises, right? Because there is no judgment of, I didn't understand this, or I screwed this up and we need to fix it. If that, all that stuff is not coming out because you're not comfortable, then it's not going to be a good relationship. So really, I think the best way to figure it out is do a test run with a couple of coaches and spend some time with them. At worst, you spent an hour or so working on your business anyway, and a good coach is going to give you some things to think about whether or not you decide to work with them.
That's great advice, because my coach is 3,500 miles away from me, and we have a ongoing relationship. So that's a really good piece of information. In terms of helping a business at varying stages, I know that you have something called a value builder. And I do have clients that have are exiting businesses and also building their business to growth, so that they can exit the business. So what is the value builder? And I'll say that, there are other coaches that have other methodologies, and yours is called the value builder. How does that work? And I've used it at one point with one of my clients that was in full disclosure in a partnership dispute, and had to figure out very quickly what he thought, to verify what the valuation was of what his shares were worth. So what is the value builder?
So Value Builder is a third-party tool that we use as part of our toolkit. So it's not the be-all and end-all, but it is an algorithm-based system that can help a business owner figure out the approximate value of their business and gives them recommendations on what they could change or fix in order to add value to their business. So it's based on eight different scores, but it takes into account their net profits, their revenue, how much of it is recurring revenue, a whole bunch of financial things, and spits out a number. So, and it's fairly accurate. It's a free tool, which is really helpful to some people to go through that, just to give you an idea, because a lot of business owners think, oh, I have a $10 million company, when they actually have like a $500,000 company, because they're looking at different, like how much money the business is bringing in as opposed to how much it would be worth to somebody else to buy it.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of different things, and there's a lot of different ways to value a business, which is where a lot of people get stuck. And you can certainly go hire somebody, like you can hire an accountant to do
Yeah.
evaluation.
Right.
You can hire an acquisition person to do evaluation. But this is it's a quick 20-minute answer some questions to get a pretty good ballpark of what the business is worth. So it's just one of the tools that I use.
That's a really interesting thing, because I thought I am going to do a valuation podcast, so that, or YouTube, so that we can see how each profession values a company, and what that particular valuation, what the point of that valuation is. Obviously, there's the tax issue, then there's the sale issue, and all the things in between. So is that value builder, in terms of coaching, a way to build that business so that that value can be sold at some point, or passed on to somebody else?
Yeah, it gives you some insight into things you may not have thought of that impact how much the value is for somebody else to buy it, right? So one of the big things where a lot of business owners get stuck is are all the customers really tied to the owner, right? So that actually,
Yeah.
that's great for you, but if you leave the company, it does not help the value of the business, right? Because how much are they attached to you versus the name of the company, and will they stay, right? So trying to separate that a little bit, how much cash would a new owner require to put into the company, assets and things like that. So it really does a good job of sort of combining all the different valuation tools that are out there to give you a good target. One of my clients last year was selling his business, and so we used the value builder to get a valuation, but then he also went to somebody who does mergers and acquisitions and paid them, and they came out with the same number. So I was like, oh, so we've tested it.
Yeah.
It's pretty valid. Yeah.
I thought it was pretty valid, because my client, who quickly, I said, remember I said, Sharon, can we just use it just to verify?
Yeah.
And it was pretty close, and he pretty much thought it was worth that much. And it kind of helped him psychologically to sort of come to a number that he was pretty confident about. And this reminds me that we should do a whole interview with exit planning with a number of different experts, so people can see what goes into this exit planning. So many businesses go out of business just, with the business owner just hanging it up. Yeah. And they are leaving value on the table. They were leaving employees that depended on them, because they didn't do that kind of work of building that value, and then leaving their baby in a good place. It's really their baby. So
Ideally, they'd want to start thinking about that. Well, ideally, you'd be thinking about it all along, right? How do I build value in my business? But in a worst case scenario, 3 to 5 years before you want to exit the business, because that's the time to get everything cleaned up and in shape.
Yeah.
If you wait until 6 months from now and I want to be out of the business, you're not going to make any changes in the business that are going to significantly impact the value of the business. And for a lot of business owners, that whatever they're selling that business for, that's their retirement fund.
Right. And I think about that. I say that a lot to people, and a lot of that has to do with looking at the financials of the business and doing this, and not understanding that, you can change that around. You have 3 to 5 years to build, and sort of, it's just, I agree with you. It's a kind of an emotional issue.
Yeah.
And it's a personal issue, but you definitely don't want to leave all that value, on the table, and walk away and leave your employees in a lurch, and all that, because there is something to continue. And most people will tell you that they started, and at some point they thought about building a legacy for themselves in their business and being satisfied with that. And what a tragic event to walk away and not really achieve that sort of dream at that point. I mean, because that is a dream. When some people say to me when they're starting a business, I say, why did you start the business? And they say, well, I'm going to live out my dream, but they don't carry it through. Then I know they're going to fail in less than a year. You see so many businesses open and close right away, because they're just living a dream. But for business owners who are at the end of their life cycle, they really need to think about, well, at some point I wanted to build this dream, and it's time to make that dream a reality. So thank you very much for this interview. And I am going to leave Sharon's information in the notes below, and then we're going to have Sharon back talking about value and exiting your business and what we should do to plan to exit. Thanks, Sharon.
Thank you.
Do